Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Magic Minds podcast, where we get to go deep on the inner journey of creating, building, entrepreneurship, discovering new insights in so many different fields. And it's such a joy to have these kinds of conversations. But this episode is a little extra special. One, because it's a live episode, live conversation with Alex Snodgrass of The Defined Dish, Side Dish, 3 times New York Times bestselling author, recipe creator extraordinaire. All of these amazing things, and the fact that it's a live episode is really just so much fun to do with a Q&A after our conversation with the audience. But it's also a special one because we get an inside look at a creator that is creating across so many different fronts and get to compare and contrast the differences, the similarities between the different kinds of creations, from one of the best salad dressing brands on the market to writing a book to creating daily for an audience that is nearing 1 million people strong on The Defined Dish, and all of the nuances between them, as well as the inner side of that creation, the vulnerable side, how to deal with being a creator that is so easy to reach, that people reach out to her, good and bad, feels like every few minutes with feedback, and how she manages all of that. It's a phenomenal episode and conversation with a friend of Magic Minds. Her and her husband, Clayton, have been investors in Magic Mind since day one, and we've been friends before that. But without further delay, let's just get into the episode with the one and only Alex Snodgrass. This is the Magic Minds podcast. Welcome, everyone. Welcome, Alex.
Hi.
Welcome to the
Thank
podcast.
you. Thanks for having me.
We are friends, and you are an investor in Magic Mind. We have so many, we're talking about upstairs, so many different threads, and I'm so excited to talk to you about all of them today.
Yes.
But one of the areas that we're going to hit on most, and for the audience to know up front, is on this new area of entrepreneurship, of building a company, of building a physical product in stores around the globe. We'll get to that with Side Dish. But right off the bat, welcome to Venice.
Thank you. I always love being here. Sun is shining. Got the whole fam here.
I know. Did you make it to the beach yet?
No, we haven't gotten that far.
Okay.
We'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah,
we'll make it work.
Well, perfect. Well, welcome to Venice and to Cali. Coming from Dallas, my hometown. It's a short flight away. The Texas roots, do you mind, for the Magic Mind audience, do you mind giving a little bit of background from
who I am?
Who you are, background from tiny town in Texas to TCU and to now 3 times bestselling, New York Times bestselling author.
Yeah.
Founder of a brand. So many cool
I can give
rap
the brief
items.
And then we can expand upon whatever your heart desires. But long story short, I am from Salina, Texas. It's a small town north of Dallas. I grew up there, went to college in Fort Worth, TCU.
Horned Frogs?
Go Frogs. Yeah, got a few here. My now husband and I, we went to Austin together and lived there for a couple years. And then fast forward, started a family. We got Sutton and Winnie in the front row over here. And I was doing kind of family real estate business right out of college. Like whenever you really start to get very serious out of college and you're like, all right, I really need to buckle down. I was working for my family, my dad's real estate company, and I realized I needed a little bit more to life. So on the side, I started Defined Dish with my sister. It was going to be a sister duo blog, food and fitness. We did it for 2 years, really just as a hobby and kind of as a passion project. And I really was dedicating a lot more time than I needed to it, and fell in love with the process. And it gave me a lot of joy in a time that I didn't really know who I was and what I was doing with my life as a new mom. And just, she decided she didn't want to do it anymore. And I was like, I think I'm going to try to turn this into a business. And so I started the Defined Dish that it is today, really in like 2016, and really took it seriously, became really consistent. My blog grew, and I got my first book deal. And that was a hit, thank goodness. And I've been able to write 2 more since then. And here we are. And now we have Side Dish, which we'll get to.
Yes.
That's the brief pitch.
That is, well, there's a lot to, a few different things I want to dive into. One was when you say fell in love with the process. For those that do not know, for everyone listening in the Magic Mind podcast, everyone that's here that has not seen the Divine Dish, I think one of the best Instagram brands, channels, content production studios that, from your kitchen. Studio
of me.
Yes, you, that I've ever seen. Everything is so well done, and it's how you do anything is how you do everything. And in my view, so you can tell the quality and everything that you do. It blows me away. And even working with you, how effortlessly you can jump into the details, zoom out, but then jump into the details when most people just be like, yeah, just let it fly, ship it. Tell me specifically, I want to know, when you say you love the process, what did you fall in love with?
Well, I think it just kind of came at a time that, again, like I said, I didn't really know what I was doing with my life. I was kind of in this postpartum, don't really know who I am. I'm just kind of going with what I knew I was going to do, the family real estate business. I've just kind of always been directed that way, just because my parents had built it and they worked their butts off, and it made sense. I just was kind of lost. And that was like this one thing at the end of the day that made me really happy. That was this creative outlet for me. I've always loved food since I can remember. I was always asking to help in the kitchen, always obsessing over what our next meal is. Still think about that. I'm thinking about breakfast in like 8 weeks already. I can't help it. Clayton's like, I do not want to talk about dinner right now. I need directions to where we're going. But I love food. I love thinking about flavors and creating in the kitchen. It's just this beautiful place for me that I can really just be myself and be my creative self. And so with creating recipes and sharing them, I found a lot of joy in it. I was just like, typing out these recipes, probably not very well at the time, taking horrible photos of my food and sharing them online. And I realized if I really wanted to make it a business and make my passion a business, which is, one of those things I have to make some boundaries around to still love cooking and food. I just knew that I had to be consistent with it. And it really, whenever I did decide I want to make this my business, it was a really perfect storm because Instagram stories came about. I was someone that wasn't...
What year was this?
I want to say 2016. My sister and I think started the blog in 2014. And then in 2016, I went on my own. I rebranded the site, very little, very small. And then I delved into YouTube, how to take better food photography photos, and just kind of went all in. When I did that, Instagram stories came about, and it was this perfect trifecta because I wasn't really good at ever sharing me behind the scenes. It was just these recipes. And that was a really authentic way for me to share the behind the scenes, what I was making, my life, my family, just me in the kitchen. And the community really grew from that. Plus I was cooking a lot of Whole30 recipes at the time. And that was a thing. And I know a couple of people here today mentioned that that's how they found me. So
If you had to look back and point at, there's two sides to this question. So one is, if you looked back at the history of the last several years, what are things that you implemented? This is just a personal curiosity. When you look back and say, okay, those were some big stepping stones, or those were step changes in what we're doing over the last 8 years that you implemented, changed, tweaked, or refined. And then the other side of that, I want to ask were there any inflection points that maybe you didn't do, but you just saw happening in the world, that the book taking off, things like that. But just starting with things that you implemented, tweaked, or changed, were there areas that made a huge impact?
Totally. I think it's a lot of hard work and a lot of luck all at once. And with the books, I'm still kind of I can't believe this many people like my stuff and that are buying it, and that it is a New York Times bestseller. It just still kind of blows my mind, and just happy it's happening. I feel like with life and with businesses, if you're not opening to changing and evolving and looking at things from a bird's eye view, often it will pigeonhole you. I found myself in many stages of my business kind of hitting these moments, and there was a couple in particular, but one that I can really reflect on is I had signed with this really big agency that I was really excited about. They were the one, and I was working with them, and I just kind of found myself a little bit lost all of a sudden. I was just I feel like my brand, this baby that I built from nothing, had become this like number all of a sudden. And everything was just so number driven. And I was just like, I love this. Cooking, I love. Food, I love. And like, if I just turn this whole thing into a number, I'm never going to want to get in the kitchen again. And I'm going to lose this like huge part of my identity as a person who just loves to cook for people and eat. I remember at that point being like, I think I need to leave. I took a 2-week hiatus from Instagram. I left my management at the time, and I just looked at my whole business from a bird's eye view. I dropped a bunch of brands that I had worked with, and, you know, all of them were amazing brands that I still think highly of, but it's like, what feels authentic to you, sharing about to help your business grow to where the people that are in your community really trust your opinion and trust your word. And it just all becomes this ebb and flow. That was a really positive change. That was hard.
Were you super nervous before that change, before that decision?
Yes, I was a basket case. I think mainly because there was a lot of legalities that went into play, but you know, it was all worth it in the end. It was just one of those things where, what if I leave this, you know, mega thing and then I just kind of fall off the grid after that? But I think at the end of the day, Instagram is constantly changing and evolving. And that's a huge part of like my community, or at least what built it. And I don't know that that's like the biggest part anymore for me. It's like my books have, you know, slowly taken over. Side Dish has slowly taken over. And my blog is my kind of mothership that everyone can come and find my recipes. And that's a great, you know, revenue stream for me as well. So I have all these branches, and it's just kind of, which branch are you tending to the most? How many eggs do you have in which basket? Really kind of looking at it from that perspective too, because you can go viral and have all these views, or you can have a different type of business, and they're both great options. And it's just kind of like what's authentic to your brand and what works for your community and who's coming to buy your books and all the things.
I find myself like kind of trying to dial back how much I could praise you for how you run your businesses, how you run anything that we work on with Side Dish, which I cannot wait for us to spend a few minutes on. It's the world's greatest salad dressing brand. It is so delicious. It's at Air One, you know, a few blocks away in every Air One in LA and stores across the country. But I also want to touch on the first few years. There's still that second half of that last question that I want to touch on. But the first 2 years, you and I have chatted about the first 2 years. It was kind of crickets. It took a long time for it to take off. It's so easy for anyone to see massive numbers or best-selling books and think that, oh, that was probably a year of work, but it's 8. Or the first 2 years of not getting the feedback that you get daily of like, keep going. Could you talk to us about the first 2 years and that kind of trough of just, no, even with the sister being like, I don't know if this is the right fit, and you sticking with it?
Yeah, I feel like the first 2 years was definitely like this is fun. It was really like, I kind of piggybacked off my sister, actually. She was a personal trainer, and she was like, I need to start an Instagram and a blog to help, you know, people find me and book me. And I was always sharing her recipes, like just easy stuff that, you know, I was making for my husband and I at home. And she was like, do you want to like share some of your recipes on there? I was like, well, that sounds kind of fun. I'll do that on the side. So it never really hit me as like I'm going to start this as a business. It really hit me midway through it that like, this is something that I could share. Cause I remember like some of my friends and family making the recipes. I remember like walking through the grocery store, and this like girl from college that I barely knew was like, I made this recipe last night and it's amazing. Like, I'm finally a cook. And I was like, really? You made my recipe? Like, I didn't even think anyone read my blog. It was just kind of this, you know, slowly but surely I kept getting this like wonderful feedback, even though my recipes looked like dog food, because I didn't know how to take pretty pictures of them. There's a whole art to that. I knew they were good, but I was like, I need to learn the art of turning this into a business, buttoning it up, and really getting this to the place that it needs to be if I want to, you know, make money off of it and actually do this for a living. And so when my sister, she was like getting married, she's 3 years younger than me. She was getting married, and she was just kind of like, I don't want to, you're getting kind of serious about this blog thing. And like, I'm not, so I'm going to back out of it. And that was a time that I was just in this boat of, I sat down with Clayton and I was like, I really want to do this. And he was like, you're spending a lot of time at night with your like little light box taking pictures, which I'm all for, but also like we have a lot going on between work and kids and life. So like, what's a kind of like your goal to how long you're going to put this time and energy behind it before you're going to say, let's not do it? Because I was, for the first time, actually putting a little bit of money into the website and doing these things. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to give it 1 year. If I can like grow my platform a little bit and get people to really start cooking my recipes and we can see a difference in a year, then I'll keep doing it. Otherwise, I promise I'll back out. And
how many years in was that?
So that was 2016 to 2017. I got my first book deal in 2018. So it all happened pretty fast.
Was there a time when it was where you're like, I love this, but there's not much clarity that I could do this full time? Or did you always kind of see like there's a path to do this?
Once I put my mind to it, there was a pretty clear path within about like 8 months, I'd say. The 2 years before where I wasn't taking it seriously, that's when I was like, what am I doing? I'm fiddling.
What are some takeaways? I know nothing about photography, but what are some of you mentioned the art of taking food photography.
I'd say just bare minimum, find a really well lit window. Natural light is key for, a newbie photographer. I think a lot of people want to put like a piece of chicken on like a really big plate, get like the salad sized plates, shrink it so that the plate feels really full and not empty. And there's not a lot of gaps, and throw in a couple like things on the side, maybe a little condiment bowl or a glass of water with a lime in it, just something to kind of fill out the negative space too. But those are some basic.
That's awesome.
I do not take my own blog photos anymore, to be clear. That is not me. I am fortunate enough to outsource that now to a girl that lives in the UK, and she's wonderful.
Wait, how does that work?
I basically write all the recipes. I take a picture of it with my phone. I'll give her styling notes of how I would like it styled, kind of like how I would do a cookbook. Her and her husband have a studio where he cooks all my recipes, and she does this for other bloggers as well, not just me. And she takes the pictures and then sends them back, and then I put everything on the blog. So I'm working on recipes for August and September right now because I got to give them to her in advance, and it's a whole process.
That's cool. And that's good to know about natural light is always best. It's certainly contrary to the vision in my head of light boxes and artificial light. But on that other side of the question, were there any external events or inflection points that were out of your control that just maybe stories as part of it, but that come to mind of like, wow, that just happened at the right time after the 2 years of putting in work?
Definitely. I think the Instagram stories is a big thing. And then also Whole30 was big at the time, and they had invited me. They have two Instagram platforms, Whole30 and Whole30 Recipes. And at the time, this is when Instagram was still in its infancy, they would invite a blogger to literally log on to this account for a full week and share recipes on it. And I took it so seriously. I would literally map out these recipes the full week like it was a cookbook. I would have a bulletin board with this is what I'm going to post at 10 a.m. This is what I'm going to post at 3 p.m. And this is what I'm going to post at 6 p.m. I'm going to share 3 recipes a day. I took full advantage. They probably had to hone down the rules because of how far I took it. Just really boosted me because I came on guns a-blazing. I was like, I'm going to get this platform with all these followers. I can't even remember how many they had at the time, but it was a lot considering the time. Nowadays, people with 1 million followers is normal, but this was abnormal. And I can't remember what their audience number was, but it was huge and very, very dedicated community. I probably had 8,000 followers at the time. And I was like, I'm coming in hot. And so I took it really seriously, and they would invite me back on every year. But I did that for 2 years, really grew my audience. And a literary agent saw me when I did my takeover, and that's what got me my first book deal. So Whole30 Recipes really helped give me a blast.
Taking full advantage of an opportunity like that.
Yes, run.
Within the social media side of things, and or creating and putting yourself out there, could be a cookbook and a bad review. Is there an underbelly side to your creating? I would imagine that's the internet, so I would imagine there is. But how did you navigate it? How did you learn to navigate that side? Does that even bother you at at this point.
I am so sensitive. Yes, it bothers me. I've gotten
because I'm so sensitive, and I look at so much of what you do. I'm like, how did she do it?
Don't hate me. Yes, it used to bother me way more. I used to have way more tears. Nowadays, I'm just kind of like, oh gosh, look what this woman said to me today. Or the emails that I get are just so random. Like, hey, your fingernails look bad. I'm like, oh, sorry. No. It's bizarre. The things that people send me. Someone sent me this spooky thing. They know I'm afraid of flying. This spooky thing about where we're going soon. And I'm like, hey, I'm about to fly there. I'm scared of flying. Read the room, lady. I've gotten better about kind of A, ignoring it, or B, setting some boundaries. But yes, it's a definite underbelly, but one that is just part of it. Everyone will be like, well, this is what you get. You're putting your life out there, and it's kind of true. I think that you just kind of have to set some boundaries. There's a couple different ones that I've set. It's number one, still loving what I love, because a huge part of my identity is cooking and being that person that cooks for others when they have babies and all these things, and just inviting our friends over and hosting. Not losing my love for that is a huge boundary that I have to set, and make sure that when I'm feeling burnt out, depleted, that I can not just like overcreate, I guess is really it. And I have so much in the archives from whenever I was taking dog food photos, and that needed to be revived, and I'll go remake them, write them a lot better than I used to write, have them reshot.
For those that don't know, there is an absolute art of writing recipes. And only reason I know that is I sent you one time.
Oh, Lord like, have mercy. It was
7
so sad.
seconds of olive oil. What is that?
I was like, dude, that is the worst I think I've ever witnessed. It was hilarious. I need to take a screenshot so you can put it on this.
You guys know what I mean by 7 seconds of olive oil?
I was like, he cannot be serious right now. So yes,
it's like a prize
I wasn't that bad,
recipe.
but that was great. I had a good laugh at that recipes text that you sent me. There's that boundary, but then there's also, my kind of what brands am I going to work with boundary, and then the boundary of people and letting them affect this life that I have that is beautiful, wonderful. And at the end of the day, I know the person that I am. And when someone's telling you something else from afar, they can make you think that you're somebody you're not. And it's creating this sense of self that you're so strong in and rooted in, that while it might put a little ding on you, it doesn't take you down. And realizing, like, I always use this example just because I always think of the kitchen. Like when you're sitting around the dining room table with a bunch of people, and, you have these disagreements or like little conversations, like you usually kind of work it out and everyone gets up and you're like, all right, see you later. But you're on the internet, and that just doesn't translate the same. So I kind of know what conversations to get in arguments with people about online, and when they're just not going to go anywhere, and when it's not worth it for me at this point in my career, and that it's not worth affecting the energy that I have at the end of the day with my kids, who are absorbing everything that I do, and that's a boundary that is hard to set, but over years of doing this, I've learned to set, because at the end of the day, it's the 4 people around my dinner table that really matter, and their opinions of me and the example that I'm setting for them. And so if I'm worried about what, Susan, who sent me a weird email, says, that's just not going to make me the strong woman that I want to set an example for my kids. So easier said than done some days, but for the most part, I'm pretty strong these days for me.
Well, I'm inspired constantly. Everything you do is, honestly, from my vantage point, it feels, and I think it's the same for many of your community members, fans, followers, that it seems flawless. But you and I have chatted about that before, that the bigger you get, it's just more exposure. And there are nuts out there that are like, hey, here's a target, or you encroach on some space that they're holding so sacred, you don't even realize. And they're like, now I need to get this person back. And it's really inevitable. I'm inspired by it because it doesn't ever seem to fluster you, but also it is something that I'm so sensitive that when we're doing like ads, and I'm an ad for, 500,000 people seeing, there's all these comments for Magic Mind. What is so interesting is because I just love the product so much. I believe in the product that it doesn't bother me at all. From the outside looking in, I would have thought it would bother me because I am so sensitive as well. I think you hit it on the head of when the shift is towards what you're doing, why you're doing it, the reason that you're even like putting something out there. Like, oh, I don't really. Yeah. If there are some people that are really like want to start up some internet firestorm.
Some people just are ready to debate. Or they need to just get on a platform and just hit it. But yeah, I think there's two parts to it too. It's like, I forgot my train of thought now.
Well, the firestorm people
I had
wanting
two parts and I got zero now.
Wanting to debate, basically saying that it's loving the product or having a reason why.
Well, I think
is a buffer.
The other thing is when I started, Instagram was a different place. It was the wild, wild west. We were all so naive, and now it's totally different. And I think we're all a little bit more numb to the commentary. And then the other one is, I feel like as a sensitive person, this has been a really good life lesson. If depending on what your beliefs are in life and spiritual beliefs, I'm like, I feel like this has been a very good spiritual lesson for me to develop thicker skin and not worry about all these people that don't matter's opinions of me, because that used to be who I was, and really focusing on the people's opinions that do matter in my life, if that makes sense. Those are my 2 points.
Completely makes sense. And
found them.
Yeah, I do feel like we are, the magic mind kicked in. I do feel like we are,
and the margarita.
That's right. Yeah. It's a powerful combo. Cut that from the podcast. I'm not allowed to say, no, I'm just kidding. I think I am allowed to say that. But I do feel like on the internet, we are coming out of this like great adolescence, almost like we went through these teenage years together of the Wild West content creators. Now there is like a numbness to it, or at least a more mature view. But yeah, years ago, things would sting for 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Yeah. I could ruin a day if someone really hit on a nerve, and now there is a bit of numbness to it. But I don't know what we are, 1,000 miles away. I would just be so impressed, inspired by you and what you were creating that I remember when we first met, I was like, this is so cool. This is maybe 5 years ago. And I was like, this is so cool that we get to chat and hang out, and I get to ask about you creating, because I just love talking to creators about creating. And it's been so fun to watch and building Side Dish from kind of the ground up, me helping on the e-commerce, the background, the back office side of things, you driving this amazing set of products, brand, like it almost is so circular. And then I'm like, it makes so much sense that you are where you are today, because of how you operate. Every little detail, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, every little detail, the sensitivity you have to all of these different stakeholders, the sensitivity to, I want to make sure that we have this brand that we're building today. You sent a message today that was so great. That was like, I want to make sure that years from now, we're happy with the kind of brand that we're building. Just such a long-term view when maybe a numbers person would have been like, lean hard into this aspect. And you were like, no, let's actually pull it towards the middle of the road. I think
Clayton can agree that I'm not a numbers person. And I don't do numbers. I don't do math in public is what I like to say.
Yeah, that's a great phrase. And I think it shines with, that's why the numbers are there. Yeah. Because so many people, especially in your world of content creation, certainly I see it in the product creation, but usually you see it on that content creation side where it's all about numbers, and they like completely sell their soul to like chase after numbers or trends.
I have friends that are both ways. I have friends that are like me that are really community driven, and I have friends that are very numbers driven. And it's so interesting to see how they operate and what they do, and just the different aspects of their business compared to a brand like mine too. And there's a place for both numbers and people that have a little bit, I don't know, I have too much sensitivity to everything that I've done and emotional connection to it, I guess, in a good way.
Let's jump right into Side Dish. Could you tell us a little bit about the background of Side Dish? Walk us through the last 2+ years to today and the brand that you have.
Yeah. So Side Dish is my multi-purpose salad dressing company. We have 5 flavors right now, soon to be 6. And really the reason why I created it is after, having my blog and all my books and seeing how people like to cook, everyone loves an ingredient meal. They're like, please make a book that has 5 ingredients. And I'm like, well, what fun would that be? I get it, because while I love creating really wonderful meals, at the end of the day, I also have those Wednesdays that are busy and we get home from, Sutton's volleyball game or whatever. And you need that like 15-minute hit, 5 ingredient meal. So long story short, I really wanted to create.
Go long story long.
Long story long. Yeah, we can go longer. I wanted to create a product that people could turn to make home cooking easier. Side Dish, I kind of was thinking about the grocery store aisles, and I still have a lot more ideas in store, but luckily I had James as a great business advisor and co-founder of Side Dish to really help me kind of hone in what category makes the most sense to really grow our brand. It was sauce or salad dressing. I'm like, well, what about a dressing that can also be a sauce? So there are multi-purpose salad dressings. They can, you can whip up a salad for lunch, but you can also throw it on a sheet pan dinner or a skillet dinner.
Which honestly is how it should have always been. The fact that you can use it for both.
Yes.
Like on top of breakfast tacos and as an insane salad dressing. It's kind of like, why weren't we always doing that?
Totally. And so it's been really fun, challenging, but fun all these years.
Tell me a little. Well, finish the story, but then I want to hear about the challenges.
I had a couple of opportunities to do like a brand collaboration where it was like, I'm going to do this with this brand and put my name on it and it'll be my product. And those kind of came and went, and all of them were just not super authentic to me and the ingredients that I wanted to use and the flavors that I wanted and all these things. So you and I had connected. We became investors in Magic Mind and lovers of it. Clayton takes it every day. And I do too, but he's the ultimate Magic Mind guy.
Sometimes a couple each.
Yeah. He shoots them all morning. Then we connected and I was like, I know I want to do this, but I'm not that dumb to like think that I could do this on my own. I mean, I guess I could have and figured it out, but to really be able to partner with somebody that has been there, done this, and can help steer us in the right direction of how to start a company and lead me in the right way has been instrumental to Side Dish's initial success and future success to come.
No, barely a co-founder. It's just kind of keeping things on the rails from the business side of things. But you had a really clear, maybe it was similar to Define Dish, but you had a very clear idea. This is what I want to do.
No.
This is what I don't want to do these other things. I want to do this. And I feel like it's been, I guess I said I was like keeping things on rails, but you were keeping things on rails from day one as well.
I do have the vision of like, all right, this is to make people's lives easier. I want it to feel approachable. I want it to feel like anybody can be able to grab this bottle of healthy dressing and make something great with it without feeling like they have to be this amazing cook or have all this time in the world. So I think we've done a pretty good job so far of kind of grasping that. And on top of it, the ingredient list is great. Kind of, we mentioned the Whole30 background. I'm really into, cleaner ingredient labels and no additives, no added sugar, and gluten-free, dairy-free, and also most important, no unhealthy seed oils. And these products do just that.
Yeah, the ingredient list.
And they taste great.
It looks like a shopping list on the ingredient list. That's not even like it genuinely looks like it's so beautiful. None of these words you can't pronounce, but which was a huge challenge. But before you get into all of the R&D, because there's a reason that most salad dressings don't have clean ingredient labels, because it is so hard to get them to be stable, so hard to get them to taste great, be shelf stable. But could you touch on the emotional contrast between creating content and recipes and Define Dish, and then a physical product in something like Side Dish?
I mean, I feel like they're definitely intertwined, and I feel like Side Dish is always like my first baby, and I wouldn't be able to, I mean, I would be able to, but it's definitely been such a beautiful thing that I've had Defined Dish to be able to lead into Side Dish. I've been able to prove myself as a recipe developer, and people trust my palate, and they trust the ingredient list that I would put out, and they just trust me as a person as well. My community does. And so to really be able to kind of piggyback off of that and start Side Dish has been really exciting. It's definitely been more of like a scary world because I know nothing about CPG. All I know is I'm a shopper, an avid grocery shopper, and I saw that in the salad dressing aisle, I was missing the ingredient list I wanted, but also the flavor profile together. There was some brands that had the ingredient list that I wanted, but it was never anything that wowed me. And it was never something that I was turning to on the regular. And so with Side Dish, my hope was to kind of combine the two of, yes, we can have these healthy ingredients, but we can also interconnect it with this flavor wow, where people don't feel like they're missing out on anything. And it's been so much fun to be able to cook all these dinners, and my kids love them. And it just adds that instant flavor that I felt like as a consumer I was missing. I can't remember what your initial question was. I'm going off on the rails.
The emotional contrast. Well, is there an emotional, was one harder in some ways emotionally or just mentally than the other?
I think mentally, this Side Dish is starting to be harder and will be harder. Plus, it's definitely, we're all putting a lot more money into it to make it what we want it to be. And that is also more stressful to know that not only could you lose this passion that you put into it, but also the financial side of it as well is spooky. And that's just, part of being in the CPG world. You have to put a lot of money on the back end to produce all these bottles so that they can go into hundreds of retailers. Everyone's like, why aren't you in Denver yet? I'm like, it's just, I wish it was that easy. That I could snap my fingers.
Do you have a free bottler?
Yeah. Yes. It's very expensive. And so that's with Defined Dish. While I have put a lot of money into it, it was never as big of a financial burden up front. That has been different for sure. I feel like emotionally, Defined Dish is definitely, I'm more interconnected with my community right now. Side Dish community is still growing, but the Defined Dish community is what made me who I am today, what made me a New York Times bestseller, and what made me able to grow Side Dish. And I'm super emotionally connected with that community, and it would break my heart to lose their trust, and that in turn rolls into Side Dish. But I really think of Defined Dish as kind of my mothership right now, just because it made me who I am today and to be able to do what I'm doing right now.
For listeners that might be thinking about wanting to start a brand, start a product, what are the unexpected aspects of starting a CPG, a consumer products, physical product?
The question is, what aren't the unexpected?
Yeah. Sure. Walk me through a handful of the unexpected sides that Alex 2 years ago it wasn't thinking about, that it's like, holy shit, there's this, and this. I
feel like when we got started with this, it would all just kind of magically happen. And I think that's because with the Defined Dish, some of it felt like magic. Clayton's always like, everything you touch turns to gold all of a sudden. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. It just all happened. And with Side Dish, it's definitely been more of like, we have to put everybody behind it to get it where we want it to go. And I feel like also there's all these different aspects of brand messaging and who you're trying to reach and who you want to listen to you, and all these different messaging points, and really how to hone them in to get your point across without shoving it down someone's throat so much that it might create a bad taste in their mouth. Presenting it to them in a way where they're like, oh, I'm so excited to use this product and I don't feel spooked by it. Or this is such an exciting product that I can't wait to cook with my family and feel like I can make dinner great. And it's like trying to get all these points across and brand messaging. And I think at the end of the day, when we started Side Dish, of course, my loyal Defined Dish community came right away. And it's like, how do we make this bigger than that? How do we get more people to find out about that? And how do we get that brand messaging down so that we can bring all these other amazing people to the product that didn't already know Defined Dish and who I am? And that's been something that we're trying to grasp. Like, how do we make this bigger than Alex? Who can we help spread the word? We're getting brand ambassadors on board to help us sell in different cities. I'm meeting with all those people and really just trying to tell them about the product so that they are not only passionate about the product, because we wouldn't hire them without it, but also know the why behind it just as much as we do. So there's just all these key elements, I think, with a brand that, you start here and then you're trying to make all these branches grow intentionally in a way. And that's a really tricky thing to do, but it's been going good so far.
Yeah, it's almost like the difference of release music on Spotify. It's like you learn Spotify or you learn a channel online, and then it's the difference of going on tour. And it's like, all right, this retailer is totally different than this retailer. This city is totally different than this city, and this stadium is different than this venue. And it feels like it's like everywhere
the grocery store politics. I had no clue. That was another one.
Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
You're gonna have to help me think because I can't think apparently. The grocery store politics has been very interesting because each grocery store has such a different dynamic, and finding the right grocery store to partner with is something that we realized pretty quick. There was a few right off the bat that were like, they weren't the best partner for us because I don't think they really believe in the product as much as we do. And it's not to say that every grocery store does, but a lot of grocery stores that select the products are really excited about it. And they in turn want to sell it with you. And then some of them are like, we're going to put it on our shelves and you better dance some circles around us and do some toe touches.
See
and
what you can do for us.
Yeah. And it gets kind of, feels kind of icky. The grocery store world's definitely interesting for sure. But there was another point that you were just making. Oh, and then the CPG, just the shipping logistics and all these other things. We have a glass bottle, those break. We learned that really quickly with our boxes when we were doing direct to consumer. We fixed those pretty quickly. And then also we have 5 products. One of them is a ranch, which is an emulsified product. And it was really fun when that separated. We have version 2.0 now, and it's wonderful and doesn't separate, but our hearts broke.
And months of work to get to version 2.
It's been a nightmare, but it's such a great product, and it's probably going to be our bestseller now that it's fixed. But our bestseller that we loved the most, just when it got too cold, it would not break the bottle, but like the emulsification would break. If it got too hot, it would break. So we had to really go back to the drawing board and create a ranch that won't separate. And we finally did it, but it had a lot of heartburn around that one. It also held us back in a lot of the products that we had lined up because a lot of dressings are emulsifications and ours don't have additives to them. I was like, where there's a will, there's a way. But at one point I was like, put the sugar in the bottle and send it out because I don't want anyone to have a broken dressing anymore. But we stuck to our guns, and we really worked closely with the great food scientists that helped us finally come to a resolution. But that was very stressful. We lost a lot of money to a lot of bottles, but I also learned from other great entrepreneurs along the way that's like, you're going to have a product that's going to mess you up and it's going to hurt, but it's normal. So just get ready financially with your investment to know that you're going to have these issues arise that are not going to be fun.
Well, last question for me, and then we'll open it up for the audience. Could you touch on the emotional low within? We just touched on some of those challenges, so maybe you mentioned it, but within Side Dish, because I've never asked you this, but if you were to point back on the emotional low of the last 2 years of starting a physical product brand, what comes to mind?
I think it also goes with the Defined Dish too. I feel like sometimes I can't be everywhere at once. And because I'm the face of the brand and we're opening in so many retailers and the grocery store politics, they want me there. And it's like, I have a family, I have a business, and this is another business on top of it. And I can't just be flying to every state to go do demos. Kind of coming to the realization that we need to figure out how to spread the word about Side Dish without it just being from my megaphone and my face everywhere. That was a little overwhelming, I think, at first, because I was like, I feel like I can't please and be everywhere and also be the mom that I want to be and just present in my everyday life. So I kind of had to take that, and we've done a really good job shifting and creating this ambassador program and some other things to really help alleviate that stress on me. But that was definitely probably my low when I felt like I just couldn't keep up for a minute there.
And feeling like the whole machine depended on.
Yeah. But we've shifted. And again, I think it's all about evolving as a person and a brand always, and looking at things from a bird's eye view and realizing this isn't working. We need to change some things. And we did. So,
and setting boundaries, you were great at setting boundaries. Maybe you learned that over the way or over the course of the last 8 years, or you already had that muscle, but setting a boundary. Momentum is a function of boundaries. You won't get momentum unless you're setting boundaries. And you're really great at that, which is such a crazy contrast to then also being able to dive into how we word the littlest thing on a sticker on the website. That's only going to see on this one page. And it's like, okay, that wording works. But you do a great job of then setting the boundaries on the other areas. We'll open up for questions from the crowd. I think if you just say the question, then I'll repeat it for the listeners of the podcast. So,
hi, Alex. Thank you so much for being here. I know that for recipe developers, creators, times change, trends change, tastes change. Sometimes I've noticed that different recipe developers, whether it's Julie from Paleo MG, started introducing grains again. Maybe a vegan recipe developer started incorporating like dairy again. Yeah. For you and your own tastes and things that you needed to change in your life and your recipes, how have you been able to keep the trust of your followers, but also being true to kind of those changing needs and tastes?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I'll try to paraphrase. I'm probably not going to do it justice, but for the listeners on the podcast side, how do you balance changing with times and trends and different shifts that might be happening around you while also staying true to who you are, what you're about, and what your followers started the journey with?
I feel like for every creator, they kind of have their own storyline of why they evolved into what they have evolved in. For me personally, I did my first Whole30 at a time that I really needed it. My sister had done it first. Again, she kind of paved my way unknowingly. And she had done a Whole30. And I was really struggling with some postpartum stuff at the time. And she told me, I really think you will feel better if you do this. I think it'll help your mental clarity. And I think you'll just feel better. And I realized quickly that I was taking care of everybody else around me other than myself. And that 30-day challenge really helped reset my mind and change my life. And so when I did that, it was something that I shared with my community, and they knew that storyline about it. And then afterwards, you kind of find this quote unquote, and this is a Melissa Urban, creator of Whole30 quote, is your food freedom and finding this way of your own. And I think some people abuse every sort of trend that comes out and they overdo it. I really did my Whole30, and then I just kind of found my food freedom to follow, and I did them here and there, but it wasn't like something that I did all the time. And we have a very balanced lifestyle that we live at home. Clayton and I like to have a lot of fun and eat all the things and drink all the things. And I think that was always evident in my page for the most part. And so after my first book, which was a Whole30 endorsed book, they did a Whole30 endorsed series of books, and mine was one of them. The next one was just me on my own. And so I knew while it would have a lot of Whole30-ish recipes, it was a natural evolution for me and my community to kind of have this. With the first one, because my publisher was with Whole30, it was like, you need to have 60% of the recipes be Whole30 or easily modified to be. With the second one, I didn't have that structure around it. So it was really easy for me to just share my recipes, and I've done that ever since. So really after that first book, I kind of broke out of that shell, and I still have a great relationship with the Whole30 community, and Melissa, and a couple of our products are Whole30 endorsed, or Whole30 approved, not endorsed. And so there's still that ebb and flow that's still there. And it's a huge part of kind of like why my food philosophy is what it is now. But again, it's just one of those evolution things that I think my community has seen me kind of evolve into.
Personal curiosity, is there a trend right now that you're kind of watching and you find yourself thinking about more and more?
You know, I think now, aside from like dietary trends, it's more of just like what people are watching on Instagram. And that to me is confusing because I don't know.
Can you tell 30 more seconds on that? That's interesting.
I just feel like I've gotten into this place where I really because I do think that's a second part to the question, because there's this trend of food with content as well. Then that's something I kind of struggle to keep up with and understand where I fit into the ever evolving social media world. And I think it's tricky because it never feels authentic to me to just like do a viral trend on my page and just share those. And I don't think it would feel authentic to my community. I've always created these recipes and all of a sudden I'm, putting pickle and cheese and frying it. Like, I think they'd be like, huh? If I do that on occasion because I'm genuinely excited about a trend, I think it's okay, but it's just not really what I think makes sense for me in my mind. Maybe it would work, but it's just not where I'm going and what I'm excited about and what feels super authentic. So that's been something kind of tricky that I feel like with how fast paced this, speed filming, it's like chop, 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 chop. And I'm like, I can't keep up. I just want to slowly chop in my kitchen and serve my family dinner and just sip a glass of wine, for God's sake. It's so fast paced. And I do think the pendulum always swings. And I think at the end of the day, this is my theory, and maybe I'll slowly burn out and be a total, afterthought. But at the end of the day, it's like, as long as I stay true to myself and continue to share, I do feel like the pendulum swings and people stick with you that see the authenticity in it all and stay with you through it all as well. And I also don't think the world just revolves around Instagram and TikTok. I think there's YouTube, there's blogs, there's books, and there's all these other categories. And it's just like, how many eggs do you want to put in one basket? And I refuse to put all my eggs in just the social media basket these days. It's too risky.
Going off of what you were just talking about with the social media part of things and kind of backtracking to your earlier conversation about grocery store politics, do you find that some grocery stores do value your online presence and influence and everything more than the product itself sometimes? Because my sister and I are wanting to launch a product later on, and right now we would have to work on so much of our social media presence to, just gain that trust and everything. But I hear on TikTok, people are like, oh, music artists, they won't work with me unless I have, 20,000 people interested in me. Is it the same in the grocery space?
It definitely has helped. So I don't want to say it's been the only driver into getting into grocery stores. I think our product is great, but knowing that I do have a megaphone to push these sales and stuff is definitely something that I think is a leg up, and we've kind of known that since we started. But I think at the end of the day, they also have seen a lot of these influencer brands come in and flop. They do their due diligence and knowing, is this a product that has been selling in these other stores? They look at everything that we do and they really evaluate, our legitimacy before they put them on the shelves, especially these really well-renowned grocery stores for sure. So yes, it's given us a leg up in sales, which has helped us, do that. But we definitely have to prove our legitimacy because they've seen a lot of influencer brands that have flopped.
Second part
is, I guess okay. My second question was that the product that my sister and I are looking to launch sometime, is fermented. And so we're looking for stability and everything, shelf stability, et cetera. Do you find that that's what do you find is the biggest difference between, such a natural, fresh ingredient product list and everything such as yourself, as opposed to, I don't know if the question is getting into stores or getting, approvals, or what is the process like in creating a more all natural based product as opposed to one that's
I think it's just really more expensive. It's more difficult to get the flavors right without adding those because you have to it's a pH thing to make it shelf stable. So it does create some difficulties in reaching the flavor. It just takes you a lot more tweaking to get the flavors that you want right, in my experience. And I feel like with grocery stores, I think to them, it's the hardest thing for them to take on from us is that we are a premium product and we are more expensive because of our ingredient list. And so convincing them that there is a need and want, even though it is more expensive, that people are looking for a product like this because it doesn't really exist on the shelf otherwise, convincing that's part of our kind of sales pitch with them. So it does create its frustrations in the R&D kitchen for sure. But once you get it right, it's really kind of convincing the stores because it is more expensive to create a healthy food label product because It just is.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good articulation of it. It's expensive, which has its own, obviously, like what you'd think. Obviously, okay, that's going to be harder because it's more expensive for you to buy the ingredients, and then the R&D for all natural or organic or going towards less preservatives. You have to find totally different manufacturers. But then the stores then see the increased price, and then it's a whole nother hurdle where you have to convince the stores that yes, it is worth being more expensive than the other products because of the healthier aspects of it. From the get-go, we were like, no, we're not going to use any unhealthy seed oils. That would have made the product would have been a bullseye for every retailer we ever chatted with, because they're like, great, that's right they want it to be right in the middle of the aisle for the price point so that they sell more. But from the get-go, we're like, well, we're not building this to be a bullseye for a grocery chain. We're building this to be a bullseye for the family that's, eating the product on a Saturday night, Sunday night. And when you look at the research around unhealthy seed oils, you're like, no, we can't build a brand around that. We can't be a bullseye for retailers and then feel like, oh yeah, have the product, but know how awful it can be inside the bottle. So we made that hard choice early on, and it's like starting over with each retailer saying, no, it's this price for a reason, and sticking to it. And grocery stores, they have their own marching orders of like low margin, and they have to make everything. It's hard to take a gamble on a more expensive product that is unproven. But I think you hit it on the head of like, I think every human would rather fail doing it right than one, succeed doing it wrong and knowing like, oh yeah, everybody try it, but not feel good about it. But even worse, fail doing it wrong. Because then you really feel like a double whammy of like, yeah, we compromised and it still didn't work out. Whereas if you fail and you're like, no, we stuck to our guns, and I think you can at least get a lot of criticism or blowback and still feel good about it.
Hey, Alex, how are you? Thank you guys so much. This has been wonderful. Love all your recipes.
Thank you.
As you very well know, there's been a significant amount, an increase in awareness in the public and interest in sustainability and sustainable farming and sort of transparency in food systems. I'm wondering, and also the connection to mental health in terms of where ingredients are coming from. I'm curious, how do you think about sort of sustainability and sourcing? And is that an important part of your message? What have you found in terms of like your audience in that? And sort of what do you think about that generally, I guess?
No, that's a great question. And I will say our audience hasn't gotten super interested in that quite yet. We haven't gotten a lot of feedback on that front, but our goal is to basically source our own avocado oil, because right now we're having to go through all of our co-manufacturers, which A, drives up the price, and B, we're able to get as good as they're willing to buy. And we want it to be even better. And so our ultimate goal is to be able to source our own avocado oil, because that's really the main ingredient in all of our products, so that it's A, the best, B, we can just bottle it by itself and have our own beautiful avocado oil, and C, put it in all of our bottles. And that would be huge from sustainability and sourcing aspect for us. We aren't quite there yet with our growth, but it's definitely something on the horizon that we've been looking into a lot more recently and that we're really excited about.
Thank you so much. This has been really wonderful. It's clear that you've built both businesses, Define Dish and Side Dish, with so much intention and integrity, which is, I think, really awesome to witness. I'm curious what personal practices you have. I know you mentioned boundaries, but like what personal practices do you have that you've been able to maybe sustain and maintain over the years that keep the joy and the love and the care that you so clearly have kind of alive and going for both?
Such a great question.
Great question. I feel like with that one, it's been an ebb and flow and learning process for me on how to better be present while still doing all this at once. And it's still something that I'm evolving in and trying to better at. For example, we're about to take a big hiatus. Our family, basically, I disappear in the summer for a month. And I basically work all year long and finish all these projects so that I can clock out and be super present. We call it Camp Snodgrass. I'm still working while I'm there, but I can really lean back. And I already have all of my content filmed, ready to rock on a calendar up until like August 1st right now, so that I can be able to really be extremely present with my kids this summer. They probably get annoyed because they have to be stuck with me for a month, but one day they'll love it. They love it and hate it all at once. But that's something that I do and that we've been doing for the last like 4 or 5 summers. And then on top of it, it's really just making sure that all the people around me that help make this all come to life. Katie is like my right-hand woman. And I sometimes tell her like, I need a personal day. Even if I'm still working by myself, I'm kind of an introvert. I think a lot of people don't realize this about bloggers. We all started this like by ourselves with a phone. We're all kind of introverts in a way. And I need my alone time. So if I've had a whole week and weekend with the family and work and all these things and or going on book tour, I'm like, everyone knows to not mess with me on like a Monday. I'm like, everyone work from home and I will talk to you if I need you, or you can call me if you need me. But I definitely set some boundaries there as well with the people around me, knowing I need a home day and nobody around me home day. So those are a few things. And just exercise, healthy eating, all the basics, of course, are extremely important and such, important pillars. But on top of those are the few things that I do.
Is there anything weird that you do? That you're like, this is so idiosyncratic. No one else probably does this. That you feel is like, this is great.
I don't think so. Oh, Clayton always makes fun of me. He calls me beef stick girl because I always have chomps in my purse and eat a lot of meat sticks.
There you go. Protein keeps you going.
I don't care. He can judge me. He judges me all the time.
And we'll do one last question and then we'll be able to mingle here.
I know you talked early on in the R&D stages and your manufacturing trouble with broken bottles. And as a hopeful CPG creator myself, how did you navigate? I think the most difficult part for me is navigating the manufacturing landscape and where you're finding your ingredients. But how do you navigate that landscape in terms of manufacturing and production?
Just like finding them in general, like to begin with,
finding them in general, and then dealing with manufacturers can be a hassle to say the least.
It can be, it can be, and I think as we've grown, one of the most important things, and I can come back kind of to your question, that we've learned is when you're to the point where you can have more than one, that's also can be beneficial, and just your ability to bargain, and they can sometimes rule the roost if you're only producing with them, and they can strong arm you a little bit. And we've learned that as we've grown, and we're just now starting with our second co-man that we're really excited about. And hopefully that will help alleviate some of that stress. And I also think that some of them are better at making some products than the others. And that's something we've learned along the way too.
Of like, they're great at these things. And then you would think that they'd be great at all, but they got great at that because they specialized, and then your palate changes or expands and they can't do that. And you're like, wait, what? How's that? Yeah. How can they not? And then you have to, if you are super committed to the quality of the product, then it's like, all right, now we start the search over again. But yeah, it is a search, it is a Google spreadsheet, calling samples, search.
And then make sure your legals are really buttoned up with them too, because that can get really hairy. But we found our original one who's wonderful. We still work with. You'll always have some issues with all of them, I'm sure. But they've been wonderful. And we found them because that they made products with cleaner label products. And so we kind of narrowed it down. They produced a run that was a little bit bigger than that we could kind of keep up with at first. So it's really about finding one that not only does the ingredients that you love, but then seeing what their production size is. Is it 4,000 bottles or is it 14,000 bottles? Can you sell 14,000 bottles before it goes bad in time? And there's all these intricacies that go into it. And then on top of it, after you start working with them, more intricacies come about and realizing, hey, they're really good at these products, but we might need someone else to make our emulsified products or whatever it may be, depending on what CPG line you're going into. But right off the bat, I think the most important is, do you like the person that you're working with? And then how much is their production run size is pretty freaking important. And the cost, of course, that's a fun negotiation time. But again, I don't do math in public, so that's not my question. So
I'm totally stealing that.
That's a James and Clayton question.
Whenever exactly. Don't do math in public. And I think it's for any founders listening to this on the podcast, or for those thinking about starting a CPG product, there's this quote, and I cannot remember who said it, but it was the gist of it is, prototyping is easy, production is the hard part. So making your kitchen and being like, this product, making 20, making 200, I think the heart of all disappointment is mismanaged expectations. So as long as you expect the right things, like the woman asking about a fermentation product and finding a manufacturer for that, or for you finding that manufacturer for whatever product you're thinking about. Expect a 6-month search to do it right, to where you're getting samples, where you're reviewing the documents. ChatGPT is a perfect, you upload it to ChatGPT and ask it, like, what are the 10 gotchas I should think about? Asking ChatGPT about, like, what should I think about in terms of a bottler or a co-manufacturer? And then really thinking through, this will take 6 months. And a big part that you touched on is the number of bottles that they'll run, because to you, it's your baby. You're like, the whole world needs this. And I've tested with 200 people, and 200 friends love it. Strangers love it. They buy it at the farmer's market. They love it. But most bottlers or co-manufacturers, they're like, man, we just want to work with Campbell's.
Yeah.
We just want to work with Hidden Valley, whatever large brands, because we tried working with so many upstarts and they didn't pan out, and we did all this work and then it didn't work out. And then we did all this work again and it didn't work. And we're so committed to these small brands. And anyone that could be so committed to helping smaller brands gets 6 years in, and they're like, yeah, but this brand just, the massive orders and the stability is so, like, it keeps our lights on, that it is so hard to find co-manufacturers that will work with small brands. And it's getting actually harder, because for the last few years, they tried a handful. Each one tried, and kind of an explosion of CPG products. And then they're like, God, but it didn't pay the bills like we hoped it would. So just expect a long time to find the right ones.
Yeah, the meetings I took today, there were like 250,000 units minimum.
Right. Yeah.
And the only one that took my time was like a local baker, you know?
And you can't, and that's,
there's
and
not much you can do about it.
Right. And that's often what is needed is, in the beginning, you duct tape it together with a local baker. And actually a great hack for this is, and a baker probably fits in this bucket, is find someone that does their own manufacturing. And then you'll realize, let's say it's a beverage company. Early on with Magic Mind, we looked at bottlers that they weren't even bottlers. They just had their own brand. They did their own bottling. And then you go and ask them, like, actually, yeah, we do have like 4 days a month that we could do some bottling for you. Or they did this like for one other brand. It's not advertised, but if you reach out to them because you know that they do their own bottling, or you hear through the network that they do their own bottling, then you can ask them, and like, actually, yeah, it's kind of a side business that we have. So that's a great hack for finding someone. We've hit our time, but feel free to mingle with Alex right down here. And thank you all so much for coming.